Shalom, I'm Rabbi Barnea Selavan, and this is a Vayichan tour of Yerushalayim in preparation for Tisha B'Av. Our focus will be Har Habayis, the Temple Mount, the place of the Hamikdash. We're here at the Kotel Katan, the little western wall. And you can see here that we're on an upper area of the Kotel. When you go to Hebron, to Marat Machpelah, there's a straight wall of stones going up, and then there are pilasters inset and outset. This was a Herodian style. You can see the traces here. This is a stone that was taken from another building and stuck in. Then we have two big stones. Then here again you see there is fill. Then we have big stones. Then again there is fill. And then again big stone. So this pattern continues all the way along the wall at this height, and in fact is intact in a home that's built up against the western wall. It's intact, its location is not revealed because the residents there don't want people coming in. But it's drawn and it's recorded. I heard about it from Dan Bahad, I saw it in books, and what I'm showing you here, I learned from Zev Ehrlich, from Jabal, Guide. So we're here just outside the Temple Mount, at the western wall, a full block from where most people go to pray. It's the Coastal, it's open all the time, you can come anytime. The prayer area of the western wall. On the right side of the prayer area is the women's section. And in the women's section there's a little staircase with a room. And right at that room is a huge stone found by James Barclay in 1852. The stone there is twice as high as all the other stones, and right below it there are little stones filling the space of a gate. Charles Warren excavated there. The gate is many feet high, and the wall has been found to a great depth below it. This is a gate into the Temple Mount from the time of the Second Temple. According to Lean Rittmeyer, one would enter here and come smack against the Hasmonean extension wall of the western wall, and then make a right in an L-shaped room, and then walk along the edge, and then enter through the Hulda gates on the south. In any event, according to Lean Rittmeyer's measurements, this gate, known today as Barclay's Gate, cuts across the Temple Mount along the Hasmonean extension, and the 500 cubits of the original Temple Mount begins on the left side of this gate and over. We're at the western wall near the southern edge, and there's a shaft here dug by the British well over a century ago that goes deep down. It's not accessible now. You see here the remains of the stones that fell in the destruction of the Second Temple, including the top stones with pilasters. There is an opinion that this happened because of an earthquake. The majority opinion is that we're looking at the destruction and the cornerstone down there. The western wall at its southwest. The western wall at the southwest corner, you see the arch of a gateway, the huge stones that stood here at the corner. And on the way in to the Temple Mount, the visitor in the time of the Second Temple would have to purify themselves. So there are dozens of ritual baths all along here. Here you see one below us, the staircase going into it. And the very fascinating Mikvah is found here, which has a divider cut into the steps itself. It's mountain bedrock. There's a divider cut into the steps. And the Mishnah in Shkolim, chapter 8, Mishnah 2, has an opinion that says there was one side for going into the mikveh and one side for going out. So this is part of purification before entering the Temple Mount. We're looking here at the western wall. You have to imagine it at the height of that tree. Look at these massive stones here. And this is the southwest corner with an inscription on this stone, which was at the top of the southwest corner. Lebeit Hatki'ah, the house of blowing. They would blow trumpets to announce Shabbat coming in, and every single day at different times. And that would be up here, so that at greater height, so that the people of the upper city and the people of the lower city would all hear the blasts. These stones fell from the Temple Mount, were on the street that their ancestors walked on and brought offerings. This is the southwest corner of the Temple Mount. The entire southern wall, and now the western wall, and the top of Robinson's Arch, which is being repaired. The top of the wall actually went up to the top of those trees. We're looking here from a distance at the southern wall. That's the southeast corner. The top window to the right is part of a Herodian room that continues onto the eastern side. And where these gateways are, there were gateways in the time of the Second Temple. And then opposite us here is a staircase from the time of the Second Temple and gateways behind it. Ignore these Ottoman and Crusader walls. The southern wall continues past it. When you're thinking of First and Second Temple period Jerusalem, ignore these walls from the Ottomans built onto earlier structures. So entrances from the south into the Temple Mount are from here. The Hulda gates, in my opinion and others, is sitting on the 500 by 500 cubits, and that's further up. This is a Herodian addition onto the Temple Mount. You would get to the Royal Stoa, to a very large, impressive building, which was on the south side of the Temple Mount, and then you'd move up onto the Temple Mount. Look now at the entire southern wall from end to end. There's the southwest corner. It disappears behind Crusader and later buildings, but just here you can see the southeast corner. So the southeast corner, staircase that we will visit, and all the way to the southwest corner. Looking at the area in front of the southern wall, there's the staircase from in front of the double gate, and further down the staircase in front of the triple gate, and the southeast corner of the Temple Mount, and then facing the Mount of Olives. This is a ritual bath, a mikvah, with a divider going down the middle. One side for people going in defiled, the other side for people coming out pure, as described in the Mishnah of Shkalim, chapter 8, Mishnah 2. And it's one of many ritual baths here at the foot of the southern wall of the Temple Mount. This drawing gives you a sense of where we really are. We're in front of a staircase that actually has two doorways with a pier in the middle, but today buildings are blocking that pier. But this staircase actually goes up to a double gate. There are steps cut into bedrock, which are from the time of the Second Temple. Some of these steps have been repaired, but many are original. And you'll notice that they are wide, narrow, wide, narrow. And the suggestion is that it slows people down. This is true neurologically. One cannot go up and down quickly. An irregular staircase. Regel in Mishnah language means that which happens unconsciously out of habit during movement. This is irregular, and the doctor told me this is true neurologically, that it forces one to focus so that I realize I'm going in and out of God's house. And here is an original threshold. You can see over here the edge of an original course of stones. And then here is a doorway. The archway standing out is later, but above the archway is a rectangular stone cracked on the left, and then a series of stones above it. That is the top of a gate from the time of the Second Temple. We're seeing half of the right-hand gate, and this is called the double gate. The edges of the passageway of the double gate end, and what according to Lean Rittmeyer is the edge of first the Hasmonean and then the original 500 by 500 cubits. So these are then not the Hulda gates, but they lead to the Hulda gates, which would be from the time of the First Temple at the edge of the 500 cubits. This line of stones here is intact from the time of the Second Temple, and this, as is this staircase leading up from the south. Our ancestors would come up here from a long way away. You'd be smelling the Torah, the incense. You'd be hearing the Levites singing. You'd use one of many ritual baths here if you had something that was taken care of during the day. Some people would have to wait for nightfall. And then this is a major entrance into the Temple Mount. You're only seeing a part of one gate, but this is called the double gate. The southeast corner of the Temple Mount, the topmost window is from the time of Herod. Here is the triple gate with passageways inside from the time of Herod. And where the old city wall breaks into it is the double gate with passageways here from the southern wall into the time of Herod. Underneath us, all around us, are ritual baths and are underground passageways into the Temple Mount. We even found the places where the torches were set into the walls. Looking at the southern wall, there's a line of huge stones here, intact from the time of the Second Temple. And right here at the edge of a gate, which is now blocked with later stones, particular beautiful design carved into the stone itself. This must have been absolutely magnificent. It may well have been colored as well. It's a triple gate. The passageways from the time of Herod end at the same place along the same line as the passageways of the double gate down there. And this is a Herodian addition onto a Hasmonean addition and onto an addition from the time of the First Temple. I'm accepting Lean Rittmeyer's opinion in this, very well researched from an architectural point of view. And now you're looking at the southern wall as it reaches its eastern end. We see the eastern side in another part of this video. And now you're seeing the southern wall sitting on mountain bedrock. There is a oven here, and there used to be a stove, a two-burner stove next to it. Ben Tanu Likirayim is where one of the rabbis of the Talmud used to sit and mourn and eat his meal on the Eve of Tisha B'Av, because it's the dirtiest place in the house. You used to be able to see that right here at the southern wall. But we think now about the mourning of the temple. Here is the site in the house, which is the best place to mourn the temple. And here is perhaps the best place in the world to mourn the temple, right here outside the Temple Mount. Another view of the southern wall, the double gate, the staircase leading to the Temple Mount, the triple gate, and down there to the southeast end of the western wall. Ignore this new wall of the old city from the Ottomans. The southern wall continues on the other side. It's the end of the Herodian southern wall with later stones on top. The window at the corner and the windows in the east are part of a Herodian room still intact from the Second Temple period. This is the eastern wall of the Temple Mount. Herodian stones, short, long, short, long. This is the eastern wall itself of the Temple Mount. This is here from the time of the Second Temple and continues onto Hasmonean additions and onto the original 505 cubits. The Kotel HaMizrahi, the eastern wall. We're looking at the southeast corner of the Herodian Temple Mount. We're looking at the eastern wall. The windows there are part of a Herodian room. There's a discoloration here on the stones, but that is just from water flowing down from an Ottoman slit for shooting out arrows. Right here, we are opposite the gate. You can see the beginning of the stones supporting the impost blocks, supporting the stones which are beginning to stick out. There was a doorway to the right, a doorway to the left. It's blocked up. Here was a gateway, which is approximately parallel to Robinson's Arch on the other side, to an entrance into the Temple Mount, to a Herodian addition onto the Temple Mount. How do I know it's a Herodian addition? Take a look over here. This is what we call the seam. The stones from here all the way to the end are the Herodian stones, one row after another. It's a continuation. It goes all the way here from the east, all the way across. Some rows go all the way across to the south and even take the turn to the west. Very clearly Herodian. But just opposite us here, there is a line. And these stones are earlier. According to Lean Rittmeyer, this is a Hasmonean addition onto the original 500 by 500 cubits of the first Temple Mount, which would start approximately where that scaffold is. There used to be a column sticking out where there's a bend in the wall, and it gradually turns in a different angle than these first 260 feet. And underground, it's expected that one would be able to find the same wall that one sees closer to the Golden Gate. So this itself is an addition. And then Herod added on to this and put on another piece to hold the royal stoa, which ran east-west and partially sat on these walls. That's based also on excavations found inside. If you look carefully, you can see that the stones to the right were cut to hold the stones that were being fit in on the left. So this is an earlier wall with a Herodian addition. This is the eastern wall of the Temple Mount, and further up was the eastern gate, and from these gates the red heifer went out to the Mount of Olives, and the scapegoat went out to the Mount of Olives. And on top of the Mount of Olives, there was a position when the Sanhedrin, the Great Court in the Temple Mount, would announce that it was Rosh Chodesh. Then they would light a signal fire on this ridge and signal so that they knew all the way to Babylon in a very short period of time that it was Rosh Chodesh. Mount of Olives, the resurrection of the dead, begins here. That's the tradition. It's a Midrash in Shir Shirim, and that's why it's very special to be buried here. Tombs from the time of the Second Temple, and we even found tombs with inscriptions from the time of the First Temple, especially in the hill that I'm facing now, the ridge over here. It's the Mount of Olives, Har Habayis, and may Mashiach come quickly from these hills and over and into the Temple Mount with peace for all of mankind and a rebuilt temple. Amidst all of this, amidst the ruins, we don't see it, but in our hearts and in our souls, we see the glorious rebuilt temple, and the most important entrance, the one that's mentioned in the Mishnah, that one cannot be lightheaded in front of, the eastern gate, is somewhere along this wall. We are looking at a monument which is carved out of the mountain. Many call it the tomb of Zechariah. There used to be tombs at its bottom. Under Jordanian rule, they were cleared out. Perhaps people were looking for treasure. Next to it, we have no doubt what that is, because it has an inscription. It is the tomb of the sons of Chazer. It is a priestly tomb. Further down and to its left are other monuments, very likely from the time of the Second Temple, not from the time of the First Temple. There is the cone-like building, which is called Yad Avshalom, and behind that, hidden from us here, is a cave known as the Cave of Yoshaphat. So these sit at the foot of the Mount of Olives, directly opposite the eastern wall of the Temple Mount, at the point where, to the best of our knowledge, the First Temple period wall meets the Hasmonean wall, shortly to be joined by Herodian stones. We're looking at the Temple Mount from the east looking west. We're seeing the eastern wall. In the very corner, it's Herodian. Then comes Hasmonean, and then, according to Leon Rittmeyer, starts First Temple period. What I would like you to see now is that there is the Dome of the Rock, and there is the Golden Gate. They are not lined up. If you hold that the Golden Gate is the entrance, the original entrance into the Temple Mount, then the place of the temple cannot be, according to our sources, cannot be at the Dome of the Rock, because all of the eastern gates were lined up. Leon Rittmeyer says that it is a gate from the time of the First Temple, but not lined up. That's not the way we understand the Mishnah. So those who hold that that's the original gate will place the temple where there's a small cupola in back there, and they'll move the entire Temple Mount to the north. Those that say that the Dome of the Rock is the Temple Mount will say that there must have been a gate here in front. Rabbi Leibel Resnick and others say that there used to be a gaping hole in the cemetery that they fell into and were able to see an earlier gate. If you look in his book, The Holy Temple Revisited, he has a picture of it, and he even thinks that you can see the design. The rabbis say, the sages say, that the measurements used by builders, different measurements, had the official block that everything was measured off of at the eastern gate of the Temple Mount. He believes he even identified that. So just notice, there's the Dome of the Rock and the higher raised Golden Gate to the right. They're not one in front of the other. You have to make a choice. There are many opinions of where the temple was in the Temple Mount. For simplicity's sake, and because I like the architectural archaeological focus, I chose Lean Rittmeyer's book, The Quest. He found a stone on the western side that he believes is out of line and therefore indicates where the 500 cubits of the first temple period appears. And here's his opinion. The yellow is the 500 cubits of the first temple period, with the temple standing approximately where the Dome of the Rock is, and then a Hasmonean addition to the south and a Herodian addition on three sides. We've done from Barclay's Gate, this Western Wall prayer area, the Little Hotel. We've seen the double gate and the triple gate, which he believes ends here at the 500 cubits. We've seen the southeastern corner and where the Herodian wall has the seam that touches the Hasmonean wall. Now what we're going to do is start with a view from the north, and we're going to follow. Here is the northern tower of Herod, and we're going to go to a northern tower that he believes is from the time of the first temple, just outside the 500 cubits, and go by the Golden Gate and work along the 500 cubits this way. Then we're going to come back to the north, do a little bit of the north here, take a view across, and then a lead into Yavne, and I encourage you to then see the Yavne piece in this Vayichan series. Very clearly now, the line, the top there is an addition, but it's an addition onto a Herodian tower. We're on the east side, it's the northeast corner, and it's past the Herodian addition onto the Temple Mount. Again, following the wall from the north, going south along the east, here's the turn. There's a stone in there where you can clearly see that it's cut, it's from the same rock. This is a corner, it's meant to be a corner, and all of this is Herodian, but shortly begins a wall from the time of the first temple, according to Lean Rittmeyer. Stones standing out, coming out further down there, and by the Golden Gate are apparently first temple period stones. Here we are literally walking along the eastern wall itself. And here there's an outset. This stone is inset, and these stones are sticking out. It is suggested that there is a tower from the time of the first temple, as for example described in Nehemiah rebuilding in the time of the second temple, that just past the 500 cubits is sticking out over here, and the 500 cubits begins further in there. But there were already the stones that are at the bottom here with the rough edges are already here from the time of the first temple. Again, the Lion's Gate is down that way, Hebrew University Mount Scopus, and the Mount of Olives. So this is the Golden Gate. On the inside, below that pillar, down underground from where we are, and below that pillar down underground, are ancient pillars, which Lean Rittmeyer says are from the time of the first temple. And the stones, which are at the bottom of the walls here, are also from the time of the first temple. These stones, I'm using paths which everybody's allowed to walk on, not disturbing the graves. These stones, says Mr. Rittmeyer, are from the time of the first temple, and that we're within the 500 by 500 cubits of the original Temple Mount. These stones continue down, heading to the north until there's an outset, which I'm showing you, where Mr. Rittmeyer suggests that there was a tower. But these are ancient stones, repaired, rebuilt over, but these rough stones, sometimes these stones come up as 9 inches out. This stone here is from the eastern wall, the Kotel Mizrahi of the Temple Mount. And right here in front of us was a gate. Now it might be the main gate, in which case the temple stood behind us. Here's the view looking out. And if so, this would be the gate, for example, according to Rabbi David Kimchi, the Radak, where Yirmiyahu came and told the people it doesn't help to bring offerings at the temple if your actions are not up to it. Go and see Shiloh, which is destroyed. Or it may be an entrance to the Temple Mount, but not the direct eastern gate. That may be further down. So, but behind these walls are early walls, and deep below us there are walls. Again, according to Leon Rittmeyer, you are looking at stones of the First Temple period, which continue. Now, underneath us here, deep below us, walls were found, a vault was found, a barrow vault, and some distance away, almost 50 feet away from the wall, below us, deep underground, Charles Warren in the 1800s found a very thick wall in a number of places. It is suggested that that is the city wall. Mount of Olives in the background, and following the eastern wall of the Temple Mount, the Golden Gate, and we're now walking south. For many tens of feet behind these plants and behind the tombs at the bottom of the wall, we still have the stones sticking out, which Leon Rittmeyer says are from the time of the First Temple, and understands from Josephus that the eastern wall stayed in place and additions were made, built out from other walls. All of this is from the time of the First Temple. Now, if you measure 500 by 500 cubits, even if according to Leon Rittmeyer, and you say that the eastern gate was directly opposite the place of the temple, then we are just about now opposite the front of the temple. And here would be the eastern gate, where the Mishnah in Brachot says, Lo yakad rosho keneged shahar mizrachi. One should not be lightheaded facing the eastern gate, because it is the site of the Holy of Holies. Rabbi Vadim Bartanura, who was buried near here, was the rabbi of Jerusalem 500 years ago, and wrote the main commentary on the Mishnah, says this was true in the time of the First Temple when the doors were open all the way. Rambam says this law is in effect today, just as it was. The sanctity is there in destruction, just as if it was standing. So if you hold that the temple stood on the Temple Mount, we are in the area in front of the eastern gate of the Temple Mount, and this law applies. And from here, the scapegoat went out to the Mount of Olives and over the hill to the desert to be tumbled down. And opposite here, according to many, is where the red heifer was slaughtered and burnt. In fact, in my camera eye now, a majority opinion, a lot of people hold that it was in the area over there, and that would be eye level directly across from the site of the temple. Again, that is following the opinion that this is opposite the Dome of the Rock. Looking from the eastern ramparts of the Ottomans, we're looking towards the Temple Mount to Har Habayis, with the Jewish quarter behind it, and we can see a little bit of the floor of the Temple Mount between the Gold Dome and the minaret, the Ritzpah, the floor of the Har Habayis. Rav Avigdor Nebenzahl of the Old City holds that if you can see the Ritzpah of the Har Habayis in Davin, that's more than important than Tefillah B'Tzibur. So I heard from Chaim David Sarasik. And the early commentators talk about what it does for the neshama to see the floor of the Temple Mount. looking at the Mount of Olives cemetery, facing Jerusalem from the east. And here we are at the edge of the Herod's Temple Mount. How do I know? Because this is a Herodian tower. Headers and stretchers, short stone, long stone, and Herodian stones all the way. Here's Lean Rittenmeyer's reconstruction of where we are. You're looking at the north side, and the Antonia Fortress were here, and we're standing here at this tower. The drawing shows the stones which are intact, which we can see that are visible, some of which you see here, some of which were excavated by Warren, and we're actually right here at the top of the tower. So this is the northern extent of Herod. The wall here runs along the reservoir from the time of the Second Temple, and these buildings that bound the Temple Mount on the north are all sitting on the portico, on the walkway that bounded the northern wall of Herod. And all these midrasas, which are 600 years old on average, all have Herodian architecture within them. You also see the rock scarp mountain cut, which made the Antonia Fortress, which was here, so powerful and so defensible because it was extremely high up on the mountain. All that is visible even today on the inside of the north, but here we are just outside the northern Herodian Temple Mount. There's an entrance to the Temple Mount. These are, to the best of our knowledge, Herodian stones lining what was a reservoir, and that reservoir was throughout this area called Birkat Yisrael, a reservoir from the time of the temple, adjacent to the Temple Mount. It was filled in the 1930s. The Temple Mount from the north looking in, and you're seeing the higher raised platform with the dome of the rock in the back, and that higher raised platform may be the end of the 500 cubits from the north. All of this is a Herodian extension. There was a fosse, there was a valley cut in there artificially for defense. Herod filled that in, he filled all the way out here, and we're now actually in the Herodian northern Temple Mount wall, looking towards the site. You can even see Al-Aqsa Mosque all the way on the other side. You're looking clearly across the Temple Mount. Stone here says Caesar, and then it says Vespasian, and then it says LEG-XFR, the 10th Roman Legion, honoring those who destroyed the Second Temple. It was found stuck into a later building. They're gone, but we're still thinking about the Second Temple and what we can do to heal the wounds, to act differently, and to merit the Third Temple. This is the man who allowed Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai to keep the Sanhedrin in Yavne.